It's a wet Wednesday morning and we're saying welcome to Breakfast Central here on News Central. I mean, it's quite noteworthy to see it rain every now and then in the city of Lagos, especially with what happened about 2 weeks ago where the entire state was flooded and got Nigerians talking about the possibility of doing more. And that has brought back in memory the sanitation that was usually held every one Saturday in a month. Yes, you did have, like, I think it was the last or the first Saturday, if I can remember, but that was indeed stopped sometime in 2016, if I can recall, in Lagos State. I don't remember what the sanitation was like then. Every Saturday, neighbors would come out of their houses. Everyone who owned shops and so on and so forth would stop selling, and everyone would engage in environmental sanitation by cleaning the gutters, making sure that everywhere is clean, sparkling, most importantly, throwing away the bin and everything, dirt and so on, you name it. If you never experienced what it was like, then you may not have seen how bonding was actually done. Besides that, it also helped the state to remain very, very clean. And most importantly, at some point, those who decided to default were either being held by the police officers until the sanitation came to a halt or ended, and then later on they were released. Remember how young boys would play football on the streets and use that opportunity to also play what we used to call in quotes, monkey post. Of course, putting stones on either side and ensuring that they score goals. Not just that as well, if you recall, that Saturday was a Saturday where parents and children would also bond the more. Now, we do hear that there are calls by the current Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, to bring back the environmental sanitation. And the reason? Lagos truly needs it, because Lagos is not smelling as fresh as it used to. So we need something that would actually help the current situation of the state. By the way, I'm going to start on that note to say good morning to you. And welcome to Breakfast Central. I'm not alone. I've got Olive Modi, who's here as well.
Morning, good morning. Olive. Good morning, Joe. Good morning, Nigeria.
Experience the environmental sanitation?
Please, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to show my age on television. I'm a Gen Z and I have no such recollection of such.
Really?
Yes. Oh, I identify as Gen Z.
Oh, you identify?
I absolutely
be careful. You know, the Samoa bill is...
I identify as Gen Z. It is Gen Z.
You know, Gen Z, you identify. The
do not discriminate based on age.
Identify.
Well, I can choose to identify.
That's a big statement with the current.
Well, Johansson, I used to be. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning. It's a great note we're starting the show on this morning. But thank you very much for joining us. We hope that it's been a good morning for you so far, and we do want to start with some good news as we have reports that the Gimbas have been released. Now, the initial story, if you've been following, we've been talking about it every day on television. Whilst we have Mr. Musa Gimba, who was on his way to work, his family was kidnapped, and then his first son, Victor, was unfortunately killed by the kidnappers. Now, his wife, Jane, was released at first, and then they were given a deadline to bring some money, deadline for a week. Now, the deadline would have elapsed today, Wednesday, but thankfully the kids have been released, the remaining three kids, unfortunately without their brother, Victor. And Mr. Musa Gimba has, of course, thanked Nigerians. He says, and I quote, "To God be the glory. The Gimba boys have been released. We thank everyone for the prayers, support, encouragement, and for standing with us throughout the harrowing experience. May God bless you richly in Jesus' name." Updates later. He's currently with, he's waiting to be debriefed. They, of course, want to thank the National Security Advisor as well as the NDDC for the role that they played in all of this. And they said that they'll give us updates. And I mean, it's unfortunate. It's bittersweet. This is one of those victories that you would refer to as bittersweet. Bittersweet because on the one hand, you think about first how a harm or a damage was done to them. You first of all think about the fact that it's unfair that you are within the confines of your house, and whilst in the confines of your house, you cannot be guaranteed of your safety and your security. So whilst in the confines of their home, their home was infiltrated and they were kidnapped. That's one. Bitter again because this is a man who is a government worker. And this government worker, unfortunately, had to leave he had to go do his duties, and this happened whilst he was away. So that's the sad part. And the saddest part of this all is that whilst all this was happening, a life was lost. The life of Victor Gimba, who will forever be remembered by his family and by Nigerians. I think that's the saddest part in all of this. The sweet part being that they have been released and they've all been reunited as a family. And just also thank Nigerians. Thank as many who kept reposting on X. There were a number of people. There's a Dr. Folu, who was also a very important part of spreading this. She was one who we first got the information from. And there's, I think, Dr. Shola, I believe, a number of people on social media who actively championed this cause. Just to say thank you to you all, to our security agencies. And we're hoping to have further information about this. And when they're done with the debriefing, they'll join us here on News Central, or Breakfast Central, to share their experience with us.
It's a sad story. It's
very sad.
It's a bitter one, because I'd say that because that family cannot remain the same anymore.
No, it can't.
I'm sorry, because you have your first son. Like they say, the first son is always, it's always different. He's one who introduces you to the family, into what life is, and then you don't have that son again. Imagine sitting on the table, they're having breakfast. The harrowing experience. It's going to stay with them for a long time.
To be honest, I think regardless of whether it was the first son or it was the second or third son, I think it would have hurt even as much.
Yeah.
Also because as a parent, you feel the need to protect your child. But when you feel in a place where you're in a place where, you feel like you cannot protect them, they must have felt so exposed and so naked, right? I'm not a parent, but I can imagine how it will feel as a parent, where you feel like you are the primary caregiver for your child. You're supposed to protect them and guarantee their safety, security, but you can't in that situation. There's nothing you can do about it, and this is by no fault of yours. So I can't imagine. There are several layers, and I'm hoping that we can have this conversation much later. Several layers of trauma. And I don't know what systems we have in place for people who have had to go through the harrowing experience of kidnapping in Nigeria. I don't know if we have therapy, if we have some trauma recovery, programs that they have to go through, because this is something they will most likely never get over. I don't think you ever get over an experience like this, having to wake up every day knowing that you're waking up without this, without your family being complete. It's just really a sad and harrowing experience. We have Judith, who brings us breakfast headlines. I would like her to join and weigh in on the conversation. Good morning, Judith. Thank you very much for joining us. The good news is that the Gimbas have been reunited again, unfortunately, without their son, Victor Gimba, who was murdered by the kidnappers. But what are your thoughts on this? I know you've been following the story as well.
Olive, it's a very sad situation that we saw unfold a week ago. And honestly, I'm thankful that the children have been released. I'm thankful that the family has now been, released from the den of the kidnappers. But my heart also goes out to the family at this time. Like you aptly described this is a bittersweet experience. There is so many emotions that one can feel just being an observer and a spectator watching. And I can only imagine what it's like to be inside of it for the parents, for the other siblings as well, who's lost their siblings, plus also their relatives as well. This is very, very sad, and my heart goes out to them. May the soul of the boy rest in perfect peace, and I'm so thankful that they're out. And honestly, it's a long, very, very long journey to rehabilitation and going back. It's never going to be the same ever again for that family. It's just one case of Nigeria happening again.
It's going to be a tough one for that family, and most importantly, it sends a very, very big message to all families out there who have their children. I can imagine what the neighbors would be thinking. I can imagine what people on the streets will be thinking. It also goes to show how dire Nigeria's insecurity system is. It also goes to show how dangerous it is that you could see your child today and tomorrow they call you and say he's been picked up. So we're starting to wonder, I was discussing this yesterday night, what kind of country are we living in now? I just talked about the environmental sanitation, which kicked off the conversation for me this morning on Breakfast Central. It brought back memories for me. Remember how I used to play with other kids? Our parents would leave us. You could go far.
You can't dare to do that now.
Nobody was afraid. I mean, come on. But now, I'm even scared because sometimes you get a phone call from home, you're wondering, okay,
Hope
what
everything
is
is
it?
fine.
I hope everything is fine.
I mean, we've lost all that going to play outside, kids playing with themselves outside. We can't do that anymore, of course, because of our insecurity challenges. But we will talk more about this. We have the Gimbas join us, maybe not today when they're done being debriefed. But thank you so much for joining us. Judith, you bring us breakfast headlines, but let's share what our top stories are. Reps demand suspension and investigation of Samoa report. It is still one of the conversations still being looked at today.
President Tinubu forms Ministry of Livestock Development. It came as a shock to many yesterday and got people asking what's happening to the Ministry of Agriculture. Budget uncovers 732 billion naira vague projects in budget. You'll find out what it is. And NDDC Commission demands 1.9 trillion naira. We'll talk about that story and how it affects you. Don't forget we have the front pages of the newspapers as well. But let's bring to you breakfast headlines with Judith.
Very good morning to you. Let's begin our breakfast headlines by telling you that Nigeria's House of Representatives has urged the federal government to suspend the implementation of the recently signed Samoa agreement, which has been an issue of controversy pending the conclusion of an investigation into the matter. Now, this followed the adoption of a motion calling the attention of the House to some allegedly offensive clauses which lawmakers say are noted in the agreement. And on to South Nigeria, where the governor of Rivers State, Siminalayi Fubara, has surprised, or rather expressed surprise at the prolonged silence of the Nigerian police over the attempted detonation of explosive device in Port Harcourt by protesters demanding for elongation of tenure of former chairmen of local government councils after many weeks. The governor maintained that if such was done by supporters linked to him, terrorism charges would have been slammed on them swiftly without delay. Away from that now, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency has arrested a major drug cartel behind the production and distribution of a deadly psychoactive substance, meth, popularly called Miri, operating in Imo and Rivers State. Now, this follows the arrest of the leader of the syndicate, 42-year-old Joachim Mbonu, and one of his associates, Kenneth Ofogbe, in his mansion in Umomi village in Ikeduru local government area of Imo State. Exhibits recovered from the house include a pump-action gun with 4 cartridges, 419 grams of meth, 750 grams of iodine, a precursor chemical for meth, 500 grams, 2 electronic weighing scales, among others. And on to Liberia, where its president has announced a 40% reduction in his salary, aiming to set a precedent for responsible governance in the West African nation. Boakim, who began his 6-year term in January, has committed to improving living conditions, combating corruption, and upholding the rule of law. A statement from the presidency highlighted that the president's voluntary pay cut reflects his determination to lead by example in strengthening government accountability and demonstrating solidarity with the people of the nation. And on to Guinea-Bissau, where its president Umaru Embalu says the country will elect a new parliament on November 24th, months after he dissolved it, following what he called an attempted coup. Now, these will be the second parliamentary elections in a year and a half in the West African country, which is notoriously unstable, having suffered a series of military or political coups since independence from Portugal in 1974. Mbalo, who has been president since 2020, dissolved the opposition-dominated parliament in December 2023 after announcing an attempted coup had taken place. And we'll move now to Zimbabwe, where the Human Rights Watch has urged the Southern African Development Community to condemn Zimbabwe's escalating crackdown on opposition and civil society groups ahead of the upcoming 44th summit in Harare on August 17th. The president is set to assume the chairmanship of SADC during this summit. Now, since coming to power in a military coup in 2017, the present administration has been accused of serious human rights abuses and has failed to implement significant reforms. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. It's back to Olive and Joe this morning.
All right. Thank you so much, Judith. I think one of the biggest stories there that stuck with me is the Liberian president, Joseph Boakai, who's cut his salary by 40%. Now, this also follows another president or ruler, as we'll call him, because of the military junta there in Burkina Faso, who equally cut his own and refused to even receive his salary at all, and then cut that for the members of the political space or whatever, or parliament and so on, and said, you know what, we're cutting it down by 50%. And then you also have other presidents who are tinkering with the idea of equally cutting their salaries. But then again, there's a country that's telling people, you know, tighten your belt. Don't worry, we're doing well. But then again, we're starting to see, just as what we're going to discuss today, budget has been able to uncover the budget. They budget the budget. And they've gotten to see that there's a huge sum of money stuck somewhere for contracts. But yet again, tighten your belt.
If it's any consolation, he has also done a little bit of cutting. Like the government has done a little bit of cutting.
What is the cutting?
Please, what's
They've cut the number of people that they travel with now.
Joe, they've also asked us to, by example, follow by example with one of the first, or shall I say second citizen of the country, and start to grow your own food.
I'm waiting for both of you to convince me. I'm listening. Go on, bring it on.
Grow your own food.
Let's have
How about that?
Have it.
You know, have a small flower bed and try to grow your vegetables. Say, you know, pepper or spinach or water leaf. You know, bitter leaf.
It's good advice. It's fantastic advice, actually.
But that's not gonna curb food insecurity in any way.
Well, but at least you can guarantee the quality of what you're eating. You know the curries from your garden. You know that. For those of you that have garden and flood hasn't overrun your garden, you know, so you can guarantee what you're eating. Your peppers, everything is fresh. I digress. But in all honesty, it's essential that we have conversations about cutting. And not just cutting salaries. I applaud the president of Liberia for doing that. It's exemplary. And I'm hoping that we can start to see that in Nigeria. For the longest time, we've been saying openness, hashtag openness. You can't say how much these public office holders are earning, not just in salaries, but also in allowance.
Just before we go on the break, Judith, thank you so much for joining us. But I just want to mention that Joseph Boakai is a worthy example, because when he became president in January, the former president, George Weah, emptied the coffers. That was the reason for him to say, you know what, I'm not going to cut my salary, I need to make money. But then again, thanks, Judith, for joining us.
Most welcome.
All right, we'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, Breakfast Central goes straight into the top stories. Stay here with us.
The Niger Delta Development Commission has presented its 2024 budget proposal of about 1,911,800 million naira to the House of Representatives for consideration and possible approval. The management of the commission, while appearing before the House Committee of the NDDC, says that the commission hopes to source about 1 trillion naira from its proposed budget from commercial banks.
Budget proposal of the Niger Delta Development Commission. The performance of previous budget of the commission was ruled out by the management as they called for speedy approval of the new proposal.
Within the president's one-year anniversary commemoration, we were able to commission some landmark projects such as the 27.5-kilometer route in Bayelsa, linking Obuea to Nembe, that has about 7 bridges and 50 culverts. Then the transmission and injection substation in Okitukupa that gives light to about 5 local governments that have been in darkness for 15 years.
The management says that the 2024 budget proposal will focus on critical infrastructure in the Niger Delta region with an estimate of over 800 billion naira.
1 trillion has been borrowed. First thing first, let us place it on record that this money is going to be tied to specific projects, because the marching order that was given to us by Mr. President is to ensure that all abandoned legacy projects must be completed.
The chairperson of the House of Representatives Committee on the NDDC expressed Parliament's commitment to ensure thorough examination of the budget proposal for the good of the people of the Niger Delta.
It is, however, our responsibility as a committee to scrutinize every detail of the proposal to ensure that we are making the best decision for the organization and the people of the region and stakeholders.
To enable lawmakers conduct proper scrutiny of the proposal before them, the chairperson of the NDDC committee urged the NDDC management to make available the last two budgets of the commission. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idonk Joseph.
Thank you, Idonk Joseph, for that report. We'll keep following up with that and bring you more details as they're uncovered. Now to another conversation. Budgets. The Budget Police, a Nigerian non-profit organization promoting transparency and accountability in budget and public resources, has revealed that its open source service delivery monitoring platform Tracker discovered a federal government allocation of 732.5 billion naira for empowerment projects in the 2024 budget.
Well, in a statement released yesterday, Budget pointed out that this vague allocation surpasses the 646.5 billion naira allocated to health projects. We'll talk some more about this, and to do this, we have joining us the head of Tracker, Ayomide Ladikbo. Ayomide, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Great. This story came as a shock to many Nigerians, and for some, it was not really a shock because there were possibilities that in this current administration we might be seeing issues with the budget, especially with budget padding that did take place a few months back, especially when the allocation was indeed put forth to the Assembly. But can you break this down to us? Let's know, what are we dealing with here?
Okay, thank you very much. So in a situation whereby 1 year after the subsidy has been removed, there's a very unprecedented inflation, minimum wage still remains 30,000, it's still ongoing different kind of reviews, and the government is saying, oh, there's no money, we can't do this, we can't do that. But then in the budget, we are seeing so much of allocations that we know, you can clearly see that these allocations are not going to help, is not going to help the life of Nigerians. And in the first place, the reason why we got here in the first place is that the government said it could no longer afford fuel subsidy, and it wanted to channel that funds into things or into projects that will help Nigerians. And of course, in the 2024 budget was supposed to reflect that. And unfortunately, it is not. Previously, empowerment projects used to be what we used to see in the constituency projects, in the ZIP 100 billion naira fund. And okay, we used to even complain about it that, okay, these projects are too much, they're more than the social capital project. But then we've now seen a huge insertion of these empowerment projects into capital projects that National Assembly members are not supposed to have jurisdiction over a lot of this. And the point is that empowerment projects, more often than not, from our experience on the field, are usually one, like a giveaway, two, to reward political loyalists. We've seen cases of empowerment projects where it's always held at the party secretariat, is always, the names of the beneficiaries are printed on a party pamphlet. So how is that a fair game? Are we running a government for party loyalists, or we are running a government for the people? So these things where our budget, our lean money, our lean resources that the government has put the nation into a tight, that the government has put the masses into a tight situation for, we should not be seeing this kind of wastage. And it's like, this is a government of patronage. It's trying to do everything it can to be able to have a grip of every single thing. This is the capital project, for crying out loud. There's no reason why empowerment projects should supersede health projects. In a country where we have the second highest maternal mortality rate in the world, that means we are not cutting our priorities right. And it would have been nice if these empowerment projects, like I said before, were even going to benefit the people. But of course, We have seen a lot of that. It doesn't. It's a channel for embezzling money. There's no proper M&E process to check. Has this project been done? Will this project even affect the lives of the people? You will see 1 billion naira. There's 700 million naira for training of traditional rulers in Lagos. So how do you measure that kind of 700 million naira for training? How do you measure the success of that kind of project? How do you measure the impact? 700 million naira gone just like that. When 700 million naira can renovate schools, can build health center, can furnish health centers, can furnish schools, can renovate roads. So these are the kind of things that we talk about. And this is the anomaly that Nigerians need to be able to pay attention to be able to, if we are going to get any single kind of change at all, to be able to get it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for highlighting this. It's quite heart-wrenching to hear about conversations like this, that they are vague projects that have huge sums, humongous sums that, supersede the allocation to the health sector and the likes. Now, what would you say are the next steps for budget? Is budget going to take this up? And who are you expecting a response from?
Thank you very much. So we are looking at taking this up with our fellow civil society members, SERAP and all that, who are very, very vast in taking the legal steps, who are very experienced in taking the legal steps. However, we are expecting response from both the Ministry of Budget and National Planning to be able, and the Ministry of Finance, to be able to look at some of these projects again. You can, of course, we have scarce resources, and you can refuse to fund projects that you have seen that, one, have no direct impact on the lives of Nigerians, or have a high rate of being diverted and the money being embezzled. It is not after the money has been released to contractors and we have not seen anything, then we'll start running pillar to post, calling EFCC and SCPC to what's it called, to start investigating things. But money has gone. But what they can do right now is to ensure that the allocations to some of these projects be reviewed thoroughly again and not be funded. And we are also calling on Nigerians to do the same. Also, another thing that Nigerians can do is to monitor these projects in total. If there are projects in your communities that the government, an empowerment project that the government says it wants to do, follow it up bumper to bumper, if I'll use that word. Make sure that they know that somebody is watching them. So most of the times when they realize that somebody is watching them, the capacity to actually embezzle the funds, it reduces a bit. But because they know that a lot of times Nigerians don't pay attention, then they have a free hand to do whatever they want to do. In one of the projects that we highlighted, there's a 5 billion naira allocated to SMEDAN, which is the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, to purchase SUV vehicles for traditional rulers.
Okay.
And in what world do you see that this is a priority for a country that is running on 40% food inflation, that has not been able to implement a new minimum wage? You see a lot of this kind of wastages everywhere in the budget. But then when we're asking that, oh, can we begin a new minimum wage discussion after this suffering that you have put us through, they say, oh, there's nowhere the money is going to come from the budget. But look at the budget. The budget is full of projects that is like the budget is for your political cronies. So look at all these places. This is where you are going to get your funds from. 5 billion naira there, 4 billion naira there, 1 billion naira there. Budget has done the calculation of where the government is going to get the money from. But we are waiting to see if the government actually prioritizes the well-being of the people like it says it does.
All right. I mean, we've seen that empowerment projects, like many have come to realize, are not really empowerment projects. And just like you have said in your report, that it seems like empowerment projects are indeed vague, and most importantly, they cannot really be tracked, because at the end of the day, we do not see anything that was done. But I'd just like to go back a little, talking about these empowerment projects, and I'm going to look at the possibility of tracker and budget being able to get answers from this. I do understand that it's a wake-up call for Nigerians to also pay close attention. But you do recall that 150 billion naira was equally spent by former Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, saying is being used to take MSMEs out of the doldrums to save them. And then we also had pocket money. I don't know if you also recall that, and so on. These also fell under that, oh, let's see what we can do to help Nigerians. How does Tracker ensure that these monies are actually true with what you found out now? You've said over 700 and something. How are you sure that these monies are not monies that are from previous administration, but they're actually of this administration? Because that's one question everyone is also asking. Are you sure it's not from the past administration?
Okay, thank you. We are sure it's not from the past administration because the projects that you were talking about, trader money, pocket money, they are special intervention projects. So there's going to be a huge lump sum allocated to that program for it to be implemented. And most of the time, these programs are implemented in quote by experts who are full-time running this program. So they have time to, for instance, do the field survey, do the monitoring and evaluation and all that to at least even get a bit of impact. These ones that we are talking about, it is the 732 billion. It is not for just one program. It is scattered across thousands of projects in different agencies. So it is not like, okay, there's pocket money, this money is, half of it is for pocket money and another half is for trader money. No, this 732 billion is a total that we totaled from different agencies that we allocated. For instance, and the point is that you cannot compare the implementation of this kind of empowerment projects that we have highlighted to the special ones like the trader money and so, because like I said, those ones are a special program. For instance, now you have the National Institute of Medical Research taking on the distribution of, distribution of fertilizers and co. What capacity, what expertise does the National Institute of Medical Research have to undergo such a project? And so you begin to see the disconnect. You just need to take one look at the budget and you begin to see different kind of things like this. You have the National Space Research Development Agency in charge of the distribution of grinding machines, sewing machines, and all that. In what world do they correlate? So this is not like you suggested, maybe money from the past administration or not that. If this were a special project, special intervention project, it would clearly highlight in the budget that this is the fund to continue these special projects that we have been running, like the trader money or the pocket money. No, this is a pocket, small pockets of allocations everywhere, and they're scattered across different agencies who have no business running them. There's the National Film Corporation is supposed to distribute exercise books and some furniture to schools. You begin to see the disconnect, and you begin to see from one glance where all the mismanagement of these funds is going to come, how it's going to happen. So this is not like this money is for special intervention projects and is from the past administration also. It is not like that.
Thank you very much, for speaking so clearly and highlighting the gaps in this budget. Now, this is not the first time. Tracker has been, and budget has been tracking our budgets for the past years. From your experience and from what you've seen in previous administrations, how do you foresee that this will eventually play out? Do you see that the government of this current administration will be taking account for what is happening and sort of giving a response and making amendments and adjustments to what is currently available? Or do you think it will just be one of those other conversations that will make a lot of noise about, and after a while everybody just moves on?
Okay, it's a trick question, but we've seen that this is a government that likes to retract or take action when it faces public backlash. So the question is, would Nigerians' voices will the voices of Nigerians be loud enough for them to hear us and for them to feel, okay, we need to take a look at this thing? Budget is just one organization. Tracker is just one organization. But we are giving the Nigerian people this information so that they can put pressure on the government. We've had this government put out one thing, when it faces a lot of backlash, he retracts, he put it out, he retracts. It looks like a government of trial and error. But anyways, that is something that we can have here if we have Nigerians rally enough to lend their voice to this kind of anomaly. Because we even did a small analysis of some suspicious allocations in the budget, where you see there is a construction of 4 blocks of 6-bedroom flats that is 4 billion naira under the defense, And you look at a lot of them are like that in the budget. And so if Nigerians put pressure on the federal government that we do not support this kind of wastage, especially not when the suffering that we are facing is unprecedented, then I believe that they will do something. But if we just let it pass and, okay, whispers here, whispers there, then, of course, they like to wait all the noise out. If it's a noise, they can wait out and nothing will be done.
All right. Ayomide Ladipo, thank you so much for highlighting this. There's lots of shocking revelations I'm sure that a number of Nigerians will be seeing. We're hoping that we'll reach out to the DG of SMEDAN to join us on the show and maybe explain some of the discrepancies that we've seen in the budget. And also, we're hoping to hear from the House as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
It was a pleasure.
All right, we'll go on a quick break. When we return, more conversations. This time, we're looking at the Nigeria-Samoa agreement and the House of Reps asking the federal government to suspend implementation. Stay with us. The House of Representatives may not be taking the NBA's word for it. A few hours after the Nigerian Bar Association announced that it had reviewed the Samoa agreement before the Nigerian government signed it, the House of Representatives called on the federal government to suspend the agreement's implementation, insisting that all controversial clauses must be clearly defined to ensure compliance with Nigerian law.
Absolutely, and we cannot be too careful. The House has also directed the Committees on National Planning and Economic Development, Justice, and of course, treaties, protocol and agreements to engage in the matter. Take a look.
That the phrase gender equality, as reported, is a Trojan horse for deceptively bringing in all sorts of immorality to our country, as gender no longer means sexes, male and female, as traditionally understood. It now includes homosexualism, lesbianism, transgenderism, and animalism. Further worried that the signing of such an agreement with the aforementioned clauses, if true, violate our sovereignty and is a clear contravention of Section 12(1) of 99 Constitution as amended.
There is no portion of that agreement that talks about LGBTQ or 150 billion. Hold on, let me finish. If you have it, bring it out here. I'll show it. In fact, 3 ministers have come out, including information, budget, and planning, in public to say there was nothing like that in the agreement.
This is the amendment. Mr. Speaker, agreement upon agreement has been signed by Nigeria in order to improve the Nigerian economy. But Mr. Speaker, everybody knows that instead for the economy to progress, it's now retrogressing like a wildfire. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we urge and we tell everybody, no matter how much money Nigeria is going to get from this thing, the handlers of the current economy could not fix the economy.
Joining us to discuss this is the chairman of the Access to Justice Committee, African Bar Association, Sonny Ekwowusi. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you very much.
All right. It would seem that there's division in the House. There's arguments, from the clip we just saw. Some for, some against. Some people say clearly that there's no section there referring to homosexuality, whilst some others stand on, the agreement or the argument that it can further be misinterpreted. House of Representatives have said theirs, the NBA have said theirs. What say you?
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, the people who are for the agreement, the Nigerian Bar Association, and some members of National Assembly don't seem to understand the meaning of the agreement. The Nigerian Bar Association did not participate in the negotiation of the agreement. I did. I've been traveling over, for the past 2 years, I've been traveling to participate in the negotiation of the agreement. I participate in the United Nations negotiations. So I'm very much conversant with the European Union language. I'm very much conversant with the United Nations language. And people who are saying they look at the agreement, they can't find the part that deals with homosexuality, LGBT, abortion, transgender. They do not understand the euphemistic language of the United Nations. The world has changed. Okay, for them it is due to lack of enlightenment, lack of, lack of cultural education, because the United Nations and the EU don't mention the word LGBT, abortion, and transgender in their documents. In 2006, when President Juma sponsored abortion at the Nigerian National Assembly, I was one of the lawyers that stood the ground that that bill must not pass. President Juma did not mention abortion in that bill. It was called Women's Reproductive Rights. The National Assembly struck out the bill for lack of merit, despite the fact that Juma did not mention the word abortion. The EU and United Nations, they no longer mention categorically abortion, LGBT in their documents. They use euphemisms. And it beholds those who understand the language of Article 2.5, Article 29.5, Article 16.2, Article 97 of the Samoa Agreement, all has to do with sexual reproductive rights, which is euphemism for abortion, and then gender equality, which is euphemism for transgender and for LGBT and gay marriage. You know, gender is no more male and female. These people don't understand this. If you look at the dictionary meaning of gender, if you Google your whatever, if you Google or you look at GIT chart or whatever, you see that gender now encompasses LGBT, it encompasses sexual orientation, it encompasses gender neutrality. That is people who say they are neither male nor female. And this is what are loaded in the Samoa Agreement. We who know, who participate in the United Nations negotiation, are telling them this is the danger. And they keep on arguing, and they don't understand the language. To be a lawyer is not enough. To have LLB for university is not enough. You need to be culturally enlightened. You need to be educated. You need to travel. You need to mix up. You need to learn. It's not just enough to be a lawyer. You need to learn. You need to widen your scope. And that's why we're having this problem of interpretation. We have told them and said, look, if this agreement is controversial, put interpretation clause below. We have said, okay, Nigeria, sign the agreement, but let European Union put interpretation clause below, which is normal in many controversial agreements. If you have a tenancy agreement, you don't know what your landlord has said. You put a proviso, provided that, we told them, put a proviso that gender equality does not mean LGBT, that sexual reproductive rights does not mean abortion, and teaching our children masturbation, sterilization, breast enlargement. They refused, which means there is something wrong in the agreement.
Can you allow me? Can you hear us, sir? I'd like to please ask that this interpretation you're talking about, was this suggestion made at the point where negotiation was done? And
of course.
And what was the response?
It was made in Mozambique. It was made in Uganda. Some African lawyers say, look, these definitions are controversial. Put interpretation. If gender is male and female, gender does it mean, even in the Nigerian constitution, you have interpretation clause. So that the terms and language does not have ambiguity. That's what we are saying. We are saying, okay, fine, sign the agreement, but put interpretation clause so that the whole world will know what you are talking about. But the European Union will not agree because they have a strict agenda. You know that I'm very sure, I can bet you that once Article 2.5, Article 29.5 are removed from the agreement, the European Union will lose interest in the agreement. They will abandon it. Don't forget that this is a trade agreement, economic agreement. What are gender equality, sexual reproductive rights got to do with economic agreement? You know, Samoa agreement is a post-Cotonou agreement. Cotonou agreement was purely economic agreement. So in the year 2000, the European Union now inserted all these controversial clauses because they are just aiming to decapitate African capital. I said this with sense of responsibility because I have been in meetings, I go to United Nations. I was United Nations in March this year, and they are saying the same thing. They want to decapitate African countries. We hear about this GMO food. We hear about this pandemic treaty. They're just after us, and people don't want to understand this. They think that we are talking about conspiracy theory. No! This is a fact, okay? We saw this, we have seen this, and we are talking about this. And thank God the House of Reps, in their wisdom, they are also mentioning it. So the Nigerian Bar Association does not have a clue about the agreement. And I started here to challenge them, the president of the Nigerian Bar Association, to come to me to a debate so that we can try the match. He doesn't understand anything in the agreement. And he's talking as if he understands everything. He doesn't understand, okay? He was not at the negotiation, I was there. And we pointed out these clauses in the agreement and said, put definition clause, or put what is called in law, proviso clause, provided that it will have solved the whole matter. And they don't want to do it, you know, they just want to go and sign an agreement containing so many rubbish so that our country will be, our cultural heritage will be compromised. No, you know, we are people, we must protect our identity as Africans, as Nigerians. Somebody cannot be in New York and be telling us how to live our life in the name of one world government. They want to make one world government. So somebody in New York or Washington, D.C. will be telling you how to live your life. You must be gay, you must be transgender, you must be this. No, these are nonsense. These are songs that are antithetical to African cultural heritage. And we are saying no. And that's why I have this passion to be saying that those who say it does not contain it, they don't understand the language. They don't even know the meaning of the articles I'm talking about. They can't interpret it. You know, we have interpreted it because I am getting involved. I was a lawyer, again, I repeat, that stopped women's reproductive rights for being made a law in Nigeria in the year 2006. That bill was sponsored by Desi Danjuma. It's on record, and we told the National Assembly, no, women's reproductive life is euphemism for abortion. And Danjuma was arguing that he didn't mention the word abortion. I said, you don't have to mention the name. United Nations and the EU, they have their language. I will know the language. And
okay.
Those of us who participate in the position that, yes.
All right, Mr. Kosi. So, I mean, there's so much, a lot has been said in the course of your breaking it down for Nigerians. We do get it, but we'd like for it to be further broken down into simple terms so we can understand it. So I'm going to ask very precise questions. I'd like your answers to be very brief so we can actually get it. My first question to you is, one, should Nigerians call for the Samoa agreement to be revoked? It shouldn't be signed. What's your answer to that question?
My article, we are saying that those who sign the agreement, that is the federal government, should ask for insertion of a proviso. Okay, we are being charitable now. Put a proviso saying that provided that articles 5.2 to 9.5 do not include LGBT, does not include abortion, blah, 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 blah. Once they do that, the matter is settled. It's a very simple thing. National Assembly is even calling for, is asking for suspension because they want Nigerians to discuss it. They want traditional rulers, they want religious rulers, they want members of civil society to be involved in the discussion, and they are right, okay? So what we are simply saying is very simple. You have signed. If you don't want to unsign, insert a clause asking you, because parties to agreement, every party has the right to ask for amendment, okay? If you have a tenancy agreement for your landlord, you as a tenant can say, look, explain this clause for me. I'm a tenant, but I want to know the meaning of this clause.
Okay.
We are asking that they should tell EU to explain what they mean by gender. Is it male and female? Is it male, female, and sexual orientation, which compromise our cultural heritage? That's what we are saying. It's a very simple
Mr. Kousi.
That they have said,
Mr. Kousi, thank you. Mr. Kousi.
Insert a clause.
Thank you. We get
yes.
the point. We get the point. You're saying expatiate, add a clause to it, make it clearer. Let's understand what gender means. My final question to you, before I move to Olive. My final question. We get that point now. Good. So it stands out. We now understand what you're asking. Is the NBA and the ABA divided in this situation as we speak now? Because there's a lot of mixed reaction that the NBA is saying this, the ABA is saying this. Where do they stand?
Yes, I would say that the NBA should try to understand the agreement. They don't understand, okay? They don't know the language. I have listened to them. I saw their submission. They don't understand the language. They say they have looked at it. They can't find anything. They can't find anything because simply they don't understand the language of the European Union and United Nations. United Nations have their language. Family planning services, gender equality, sexual reproductive rights, human rights is the equity is included now as a human right by the United Nations and the European Union. LGBT is a human right. So when they say human right, the Samoa agreement, human right was mentioned 100 times. They should define what human right is all about. I mean, you mentioned 100 times. What human right are you talking about? You know that ordinary human right is human right that you and I know. But to the European Union and to the United Nations, human rights encompasses LGBT, transgender, is their rights. We're not on the same page in this matter. To be on the same page, let the times be defined. The NBA should be, I don't know where they are doing like this. You know, you don't understand something and you don't want to own up that you don't understand. They go about making statements as if being a lawyer gives you, you know everything. They don't know everything. We are telling them, please, understand the language, go and read the documents, okay? I can tell you if you pick up the documents of European Union or United Nations who work in Nigeria, you see all these funny languages. Universal access to contraceptives, universal access to sexual reproductive rights. Whereas what they are saying is that our children in school should be taught very terrible things, masturbation. I told you that last time that we are in court because we came across the syllabus they are using in public schools in Nigeria, which includes masturbation, breast enlargement. That's where I saw breast enlargement for the first time, all the transgender, and sterilization. So a JSS for a JS girl is being taught sterilization so that when he or she marries infertile, they are no children. This is a criminal, and we can't joke with it in the guise of, sexual reproductive rights. No, it is criminal to teach young people this.
All right.
And I also explained to you that the danger about Samoa agreement is that even before it was signed, it's being implemented in Nigeria. Or they don't call it Samoa agreement. It's being implemented under sexual and reproductive rights. It's being implemented in schools. It's against our law. It's against our values. How can you think they don't have regard for our laws? They come here and do whatever they like. With those their way is the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Health, and they get one person there to agree with them to implement nonsense in our schools. This is terrible,
Well.
And any day I try to challenge anybody who has a contrary view. We can come for a debate, and I'll provide documents in my office what these people are doing, documents from Ministry of Health, from Ministry of Education, terrible documents. Okay, this is not good for Nigeria. This is not good for Africa.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Sonny Kousi, for breaking this down to us. I'm sure the Nigerian Bar Association President, Mr. Yakubu, sorry?
Yeah.
All right, that's fine. I'm saying thank you so much for breaking it down. We hope the NBA and, of course, those who are in support will take time out, like you've called them out, so you can all meet and look through. But then again, the reps have suspended it, so that should give pretty much enough time for everyone to really dig deep and find answers. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So it's a very, very big conversation, and you did hear quite a difference from what the NBA is saying, the ABA is saying. Please take note. And he did pull out some very, very important points there, saying that he's been on a tour across African states. He's seen where a lot of persons in African countries have rejected that clause and have raised their hands up to say, please kindly specify what you mean by gender. And it reminds me of a video I saw yesterday where back in 1999, if you clicked on gender, you would see male and female. But these days, in some websites, you click on gender, you would have about 15 options. So you need to know which one you belong to. And I think that's the point he's trying to highlight. But then again, more conversation on the Samoa deal. Let's bring to you a recap of the top stories we've had this day. A recap, reps demand suspension and investigation of Samoa report. You did hear that conversation just now. It's quite intense. We look forward to having updates. President Tinubu creates Livestock Development Ministry. You heard that in the news, where Judith indeed also shared that story. And NDDC Commission demands 1.9 trillion naira as 2024 budget. Let's bring to you what's coming up next here on Breakfast Central.
Coming up next on Breakfast Central, budget uncovers 732 billion naira vague projects in the budget. We already talked about that, but we'll talk about that some more, even as we highlight it in Which Way Nigeria. And then the newspaper front pages this morning will be up next. We'll open the phone lines for you to join us. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. It's time for you to be a part of the conversation this morning as we open the phone lines for you to call and react to any of the stories making the headlines today on the newspapers. We're joined by Sheson Kwade, Public Affairs Analyst. Good to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning, Olive. Good morning, Joe. I think brown is the main color for this one.
Joe didn't get the memo. At least he has a brown bracelet. So burgundy-ish.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into the papers this morning. We're reviewing what the stories on the front pages are saying, and then just to remind you as well that you can call and be a part of the conversation to react to any of the stories. The numbers to call are scrolling on your TV screen, and remember that before you call, please turn down the volume of your TV set so that we can have a proper conversation. We begin with the Punch newspaper this morning. On the front page of the Punch, the big story there, fuel crisis lingers as NNPC seeks fresh $2 billion crude-backed loan. NNPC in talks for another oil-backed loan to boost its finances, says Kyari. Oil firm wants new loan against 30,000 to 35,000 barrels per day of crude production. Nigerian drug baron flees South Africa, arrested in Imo mansion. Court orders for future of NIMASA funds diverted under Jonathan government. Rescue abducted Kaduna journalists and families. NPAN tells federal government. So I guess we have another kidnap story to continue talking about. We also have how Emefiele awarded CBN contracts to own companies according to witness. Samoa agreement, reps demand suspension as NBA false same-sex allegation. NEF demands grazing reserves as Tinubu plans livestock ministry. Blackout, NERC rules out tough sanctions against discos. 19 Nigerian airports not viable according to FAN, and that's all that we have on the Punch.
All right, let's move on to another paper now this morning. Let's go to This Nigeria. And This Nigeria says, hungry Nigerians may soon protest if food crisis persists, Senate warns federal government. Silos reserves empty. Lawan raises the alarm. Government taking measures to address worries. Okay. Wiki allocates 400 hectares of land for Apple Mechanics relocation. That's another one. Reps urge Tinubu to suspend Samoa agreement. Let's take another one quickly. Kaduna rescue abducted journalists. NPAN tells security agents. Farmers headers clash. Tinubu creates Ministry of Livestock Development. Inaugurates implementation committee with ex-INEC boss Jega as deputy chair. Let's go straight to the first story I'd like us to react to. Let's start off with Tinubu creating Ministry of Livestock Development. What do you take?
Yeah, well, I saw the headlines of that we are now having Ministry of Livestock Development. My concern is, at the beginning of this administration, we heard about collapsing MDAs and some other things. Here we are again creating another one. Have we asked ourselves, what is the performance level of the existing ministry that we're actually creating? This should be a sub under a ministry. I'm sure Ministry of Agriculture, where this should be maybe an arm or a department which should be responsible for whatever you might call their terms of references. We add that this will address the issue of the farmers' crisis that we've been handling. Can that not be handled under a particular ministry as a sub? Because what I think will happen again is you are overbloating the small resources that we are complaining about. It's either that or other ministry managing this before now are not doing what is needful. If we looked in line of our revenue agencies trying to streamline them to say, let's have a minimum, just one consolidated revenue generating agencies where we call the revenue, that's consolidating FIRS, some other MPA and the likes, to just be one where we can now create departments under them so that we have somebody responsible for this while those other arms will be directed. But expanding the scope of creating this livestock, I keep asking myself, what value is just personal? What value would this actually give when, while they were under a particular, is it that that ministry is overwhelmed? If a director is performing under a particular ministry and he takes his report straight to the minister and he's not having it, he will blow his trumpet behind the scene. I feel that we don't need these more numbers of ministries that we are creating, but rather to empower those ones that we have to give delivery of what is expected of them, and we can streamline our costs. You see, in times that we are faced with, like you are reading in the other headline, that we have hunger in the land, we are not having increase in our revenue. All you need to look at is how do you manage and tame your cost in such a way that you can have something commensurate to the revenue that you have, and not that you'll be overbloating it by creating other ministries as we are. For me, I see it as something that is not necessary, but the presidency understands the reason for creating it. But they've told us at the beginning that we intend to consolidate, but now we are saying a different thing from what they say. I don't know the direction that we are facing when it comes to this particular issue with the government.
I mean, too many angles to look at that conversation from. We'll talk about it much later. It's basically we're looking at where is this, how is this being funded? You know, why is this coming up now? Like you said, can't this be, you know, shelved into maybe another ministry? We already have existing ministries that could probably handle
Ministry of Agriculture.
Ministry of Agriculture, exactly. So a lot of it seems very vague, you know, very unclear. And right now, the one thing we do not need is, you know, a lack of clarity with Nigerians. We are in such turbulent times that we don't need anything that will just confuse us right now.
I think the major area we just need to focus on, how do we actually cut our expenses?
Exactly.
Reduce it to the barest minimum. Because the truth is, we are not generating more revenue in any way. In any way, we are not generating any revenue. When you look about the oil production, you talked about oil theft, crude oil theft, which is supposed to be major revenue. The businesses are really not smiling. So it's struggling period for even company to meet up with their obligation of paying taxes even to the government. You discover that when businesses are leaving the shore of this country, you know the impact of that on our revenue when it comes to payment of taxes and all the like. So when you look at your revenue reducing, maybe the finance man in Maine is just what he's speaking. The area you need to concentrate more on is how do we reduce our expenses that we are currently faced with, not overbloating, because when you create that ministry, that means you now have more department under that particular ministry to justify the reason for its creation, and that on its own will create more expense for you as a government.
Very interesting. Let's go back to this Nigerian newspaper. I'd like us to take a look at that newspaper again. At the top there, the top right, reps urge President Tinubu to suspend Samoa agreement. I know you've heard about this Samoa. You know, everyone is wondering, what really is Samoa? What's your take on that?
You see, I've not had the opportunity to study in depth, you know, this agreement because it's not my purview. I'm not on the payroll of the government. I can study possibly because of analysis and the likes. But I've read forth and back, you know, people's position who are actually there. And you saw NBA coming to say there is nothing really too keen about this thing. This issue of clause 2.5, that is the major point of contact. See, we need to have a depth in, you see, when you sign agreement with organization, part of the thing is clarity about every line item. Don't assume. We seems to be maybe giving assumption, and that's why different interpretation is coming to this particular clause. Can we hear from those provider of funds direct interpretation of what that clause 2.5 connotes on the issue of gender equality? Because in some space, you know, this is not specifically for us as a nation, where we say our culture stipulate that gender is male and female. In some clime, when you talked about gender equality, you talked about the LBQ stuff. You must give them that privilege because they are actually recognized. So when you talked about gender equality, some people are already recognizing them, the bisexual and all those classes, some people. And because they are not relating to you alone, it's something they put in their clause. It's just like an organization that relate to several vendors. So he has a template of what he pushes out. Is welcomed by this particular organization. But for this, that clause might actually, you know, affect their existence. So I think the federal government, the rep has actually taken the right step here for clarity of what that clause is all about, because we know, to us, to me, it's ambiguous. And it's not about our own culture where we only recognize male and female as our gender. On some other climes, those other set of people are now being recognized even by law. And that is why you see them putting it into the clause, so that we won't have a situation where those people that are actually affected, that our own law or act is working against, will come out to say, no, there is provision for us in this particular agreement, and we are taking the federal government to court, and we start another forth and back to not to even have or exercise the load we are actually expecting. So I think the rep is right. Let's have a deep, you know, interpretation of what that clause is all about. At least that will erase this idea of everybody coming to give their perspective to it. But by my own interpretation, in other climes, this other set of people are being recognized as gender, and their law, you know, give them that room for them to be recognized when you are taking care of anything in the country.
Well said. I think these are some of the very, very critical points being made concerning the Samoa deal. Well, let's go straight to another paper. Let's take a look at Daily Trust this morning. Let's see what the Daily Trust has in store for us. Okay, let's start with Daily Independent. I beg your pardon. Let's go straight to Daily Independent this morning. Daily Independent says, take emergency measures to end hunger. Senate tells federal government. That's quite similar to what the this Nigeria says as well. Let's take a look at another point there. It says, address Nigerians on steps being taken to tackle situation. Reps ask federal government to suspend Samoa agreement implementation. Bill seeking 74 legislative seats for women passes second reading. I like your take on that. 74 legislature seats for women passes second
Why
reading.
did you turn and look at me when you said that?
I even had to raise my head up to look at your reaction.
Well,
you see what we're saying?
Well, that's good feedback.
Okay.
You know, that's
all
great
right. I see. I saw something. Anyway, federal government to invest in made in Nigeria vehicles. I don't think we should have this topic for now, because if they wanted to, we know where it would have started from. Why fuel scarcity will persist for long in Nigeria by Pengasin. They did give a breakdown inside of Daily Independent you want to read so you could plan and plot. Most importantly, post-warning strike, NASU, SANU to picket strategy government offices in Abuja. Remember, they've given their warning and they are about to begin. Let's see your response. Let's hear your response on this one. Labour says minimum wage struggle not dead. Insists on 250,000 naira.
Joe, you've known my position on this issue of labor struggle.
Has it changed? I want to know if that's changed.
No, it can never change, because part of the areas I want to focus on is how we can have good policy to strengthen our currency. You see, I want a situation where we'll be talking about people earning just 10,000 naira, and it will go a long way to address some of the issues that we are faced with. And that speaks to some of the policies that the government will definitely put together. Look at it. We are still talking. Look at the others you read about Pegasus saying fuel queue will linger for a while. Do you know the impact of that on productivity, either for you that you are moving on the road or for organization? We've been seeing outages. I read in one of the headlines this morning where NEC is actually putting pressure on the disco that they are going to be penalizing them for blackouts that is actually coming up in those areas. So when you look at the impact of energy cost in our production and what we are actually faced with, you discover that we still have a very long way to go. And I will continue to say that we should drive more in the area of policies that will enhance productivity, that will enhance more people. What is Labour saying about organization? Leaving the shore of our country, creating high level of unemployment. The few ones that are existing, you want to through minimum wage, collapse them again. Can we engage government in areas where we can see energy costs being reduced, where we can see infrastructure being developed to enhance productivity, where we can see government being engaged in such a way that we will not be going out to go and have health, tourism, where they will locally make those things available and they will engage themselves in it. With that, what you'll be seeing is that those foreign exchange that we are putting pressure on in settling some of those things will be available for productivity. How are we going to enhance some of the resources that we have that will be able to produce it? All of us were actually, clamoring and say, no, when Dangote refinery comes up, it's going to open up businesses, it's going to do a lot of things. Here we are seeing Dangote complaining. Does that actually energize or give a moral boost to any other individual to say they want to venture into that particular thing? Because those that are there are not having the leeway, that encouragement to see the value that they can get from it. So I think rather than coming to say we want 250,000 as a minimum wage, we should be talking of how government can force down the cost of living, making the cost of living more meaningful, and have a take-up and see how we can strengthen our currency. I heard somebody saying this morning that can we start having exchange of some of these goods and services in our own currency? You don't go to China and say you want to pay dollar. They want to get their currency. When we have started transactions, even locally here, people prefer to spend dollars more than naira. Mm-hmm. What are we doing to address some of these things? These are things that are putting pressure on our currency. Each time I look at the way my father will always talk to me, that those days you can see, dollar being equivalent to naira, where people come in here, go even to our education sector, you have white people coming, but reverse is the case, where we have to now run out there. Can we start talking about policy formulation that can guide to restore and strengthen our currency? I want to live up to a day where they will tell you that the cost of your rent, that is in millions, can come to thousands that you'll be paying, and that will be a moral booster. I don't like when you say people are earning millions and millions, but you can't see the impact on them. They earn millions and every other cost has actually eroded that particular thing. If we pay 1 million naira today to as minimum wage, I can tell you that it cannot solve the problem of an average citizen. Mm-hmm. Rather, you will see more organizations collapsing. And when they collapse, what happens? They excuse those staff and they come to the labor market again. Those that cannot endure engage in all other things, creating insecurity on the part of the people. So I feel that government should try as much as possible. And what are we doing to address this hunger? Joe? It's difficult for people to move on the road.
People are paying 1,000 naira to buy fuel in Abuja. When I saw that yesterday in the headlines, I was in shock. I said, how are people coping? How are people surviving? Because an automatic increase in the cost of fuel would, it would spread across board. We'll see it in the cost of increasing the cost of transportation, food, and even worse is that not only
the transportation affects the food now.
Exactly, because you need transport to move the food.
Some of those things. And so who does those things come to? Comes to you and I, the consumer. Yeah. And I always ask the question: have they increased your salary? The answer is no. As a matter of fact, people are streamlining how to reduce or stay on the store. People are devising other means. So that's why I feel that what we should be addressing is that some of the people, this NLC, engage the government. They are part of the policy formulators. They are part of the people that work with the government. What are they doing to address some of these problems that we are faced with? We are already seeing excuses by NNPCL on why we cannot actually have this fuel. Before now, we were told that we have it in store. People should not do panic buying. But day 1, day 2, here we are. Day 3, we are still experiencing the long queue.
And Pengasin dropping a message again.
That this might linger for long. So how are you going to cope with it? I ask yourself, how many hours, productive hours, you go and use to queue for a whole day when you should be thinking on how to make money, on how to strategically
sleep, get enough rest.
If we are not going to even go to work, do you know what people now do? The days they don't go to work, they go and use it to queue for fuel when you should be resting so that you can have that energy to continue. These are areas that labor should concentrate on, not we coming to stand on government that pay 250,000 minimum wage because that is what we feel can match up their spending. What policies are we putting in place?
But you see that one is another argument for another day. Because there are people that will say that these things can happen simultaneously. The increase can happen because if you're talking of policies,
once those things get
implemented. See, if they implement policy, if they start to move for implementation of policy, you know how things work. It will take a while. Before that while will happen, are people not going to feed? Are people not going to, take care of their health?
I have this to say that by the time you increase that particular thing, you are increasing the lot of those people that are actually taking more of our money, diverting our funds because they have to take care of that area. So what we should do is that 2 wrongs don't make it right. What you need to do is how do we checkmate the activity to say, government, we are less concerned. In fact, we want this thing to happen, but you must make available food, make available infrastructure, make available this. You promised us this to happen at a particular timeline.
I want us to quickly take another story before we wrap up. I mean, we've been following up with the update on the Gimba story, but unfortunately, it just feels like whilst we are celebrating in some way the release of the Gimba family and the Gimba children, we unfortunately have the kidnap of 2 Kaduna journalists, and on the front page of the Punch newspaper, the story is there, and I'm just going to quickly highlight it. It says, a newspaper, here we have the front page, it says, rescue abducted Kaduna journalists, family tells the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria. Now, the NPAN has charged the federal government to ensure the rescue of the 2 Kaduna-based journalists, Abdul Ghaffar Alabelewe and Abdurrahim Audu, who were abducted alongside their families by bandits at the weekend. Now, Abdul Ghaffar is of the Nation newspaper and Abdurrahim Audu is of the Blueprint newspapers, and they were both kidnapped from their homes in Dajonu Community Millennium City area of the Chikun local government area of Kaduna State. So you see, people are now no longer safe in their homes. The same thing happened with the Gimba family. They went to their homes to kidnap them. This incident was confirmed by one of the victims' family members, Taufik Olayemi, who disclosed that bandits invaded the community around 10:30 p.m. and carried out their operation after shooting indiscriminately. It was reported that Abdurrahim's wife was abandoned in the bush by the bandits because of her health condition. Now, what's even more worrying for them is that since these people have been kidnapped, there's been prolonged silence from the abductors. So they're asking and they're begging the abductors to please make sure that they do not harm these families. So it just feels like we're in fact, it can't be that we're finishing one, because I can't completely say that the Gimba's case was completely finished, because they are reunited short of one family member. Their son, Victor, was killed. And now we have 2 families that have been kidnapped. And there's silence. We don't know what to make of it. We have an insecurity crisis on our hands.
Olive, you see, we are only talking about these journalists because
it has made it to the news. There are many that haven't even made it to the news.
There are many people around that. The other time we talked about the kidnapping of these Fuani brothers. Yes. It's because they are high and mighty. Do you know the number of people that have been adopted from their own. The major challenge I keep asking, if these people had that boldness, remember when they went to this military man in Abuja? For you, do you know there are certain things I ask myself? Those days when you hear about a military officer, you are scared to even move very close to wherever they reside. But these days, I ask myself, these guys are so bold enough to challenge military officers who they know are trained. So what is the fate of you and I, who do not even have understanding of how to protect ourselves where it is? And it's because we have said it times with that number. Only, Joe, we have asked questions. We have heard of people being kidnapped. They are being released. How many of these people have we heard that they have actually been captured and punished? Even though we might not want to go the route of those Asian countries where you kill them, how many of them have been caught? Nowhere is safe, because I keep hearing, telling individuals, if we have now to come to the southwest, where we consider to be a safe haven in the country, where people are being kidnapped, even in our state, how do we manage it? You see, it's a problem that we'll keep talking about, that government need to work on. And for us as individuals, as citizens of the country, if you see something, say something. Take the security of your environment as priority. And that's what most of these estates are now doing. They put you under serious scrutiny before you even go in. Whether you are well dressed, they engage people and make sure that they take care of their security officers who are actually policing them, because a secured environment is a prosperous nation. So you can imagine what this family are going through is already a diversion. Nobody will be concentrating. What they will be looking out for now is how to mop up funds to make sure that they rescue out those people. And these funds are being paid, to some of these people that are perpetrating this ill, and we cannot trace them out. It's a problem, and I think that government need to look holistically to it, because a secured and a safe environment is an environment where prosperity abounds.
I agree with you. I mean, while this is ongoing, you also have about 560 repentant Boko Haram members being integrated back in the Borno society. They're being told that, I mean, the videos were there. They're being
submitted their arms, and they've repented.
They're going through training and all that. They will pass through training programs.
And I asked the question, Joe, to interject it, those that they've wasted their life, what becomes of them? A lot of them are still in the IDP, and we are using the taxpayers' money generated to actually take care. People have said it, and I keep saying this, that I wish that we can adopt part of those Asians' rule to say, you have killed by the sword, go by the sword. Rather than, repentance is of God, not of human.
I agree.
If you have confirmed that you have been part of it and you own up to it, there should be consequence for what you have done, so that will encourage. Part of the problem why this thing keep expanding on daily basis is that some of the people that are actually being reintegrated are informants. You see, when you want to perpetrate anything, information is key. You bring them back into the system, they are integrated into it, and they give their principal, information on how to go about individual, government, and things that are happening, and that will give them those ones the boldness of how to carry out their act. I don't think it's the right thing for us to do, but if that's the way they've chosen to go back, I think we should just minimize and stop all those things so that we can have a secure environment for more prosperity.
Well, talking about kidnapping and all that's happened, the 9 billion kidnappers gang were killed just last week in Lagos. We did see what the police did. We'll have that conversation later on. Everyone is talking about it.
It's a kudos.
It seems like kidnapping has found its base in Lagos fully ever since Evans was caught, and nothing, like so you said, nothing has been done. Nigerians have not seen anything, so it's like a thriving business. Let's continue. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here, helping us to analyze the papers as well.
It's a pleasure always to start the Wednesday with you.
All right, great. We'll go for a quick break. When we come back, the big question pops up again, and simply is, which way, Nigeria? Stay with us.
President Bola Tinubu is set to create a new ministry, the Ministry of Livestock Development. Now, this new ministry was announced during the inauguration of the Presidential Committee on Livestock Reforms at the Presidential Villa. While some Nigerians and some groups such as the Mieti Allah have applauded this move, some others are not having it. When you hear of the Ministry of Livestock, several questions come to mind. Don't we already have the Ministry of Agriculture? Shouldn't livestock come under the Ministry of Agriculture? Why wasn't this announced at the same time that the cabinet was set up? Can we afford a new ministry? Does this mean the appointment and the screening of a new minister, new employees? Or are we just going to do a redeployment of some of the staff already existing at the Ministry of Agriculture? Are we setting up new offices for them? Was this budgeted for in 2024? How exactly is this ministry going to be funded? Is this a rebranding of the suspended Ruga program? What has become of the livestock intervention program? Is this a surefire solution to end the farmer header crisis that has plagued our people? Wait, what happened to the implementation of the Onsoi report? See, the questions can go on and on. But if you ask me, now who I go ask? We cannot deny that the farmer header crisis has dealt a hard blow to our citizens. People have lost their lives as a result of the conflict. It has also resulted into food insecurity and in many cases unemployment. We all can agree that it is a problem that needs to be solved. Now, whilst on the face of it, the Ministry of Livestock, if administered properly, may be a good idea. I cannot say that it is, and I cannot say that it isn't. However, what I can say is that when a new ministry is announced in the middle of a struggling economy, powered by a trust deficit, eyebrows will certainly be raised and questions will be asked. Ministries, departments, and agencies of the government have been used as tools to perpetrate corruption time and again. Sadia Umar Farouk, the former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disasters Management and Social Development, has been asked by the court to account for the payments of 729 billion naira to 24.3 million poor Nigerians for 6 months. We're not talking thousands, we're talking billions naira. Headlines like this further reminds us that we're still fighting corruption. Or maybe it's corruption that is fighting us. What of better I do? It has been 6 months since her suspension and the silence is really loud. What is the outcome of the investigation that was carried out in her case? Has she been cleared of all wrongdoing, or was the concrete evidence found against her? Will Nigerians ever get an explanation and some form of closure in Betta Edu's case, or should we say that we should know better? Budget revealed that its service delivery promotion platform Tracker, which allows citizens to collaborate, track, and give feedback on public projects in their communities, has discovered 732.5 billion naira worth of empowerment projects in the 2024 federal government capital and constituency projects. This is an amount that is higher than the 646.5 billion naira that's allocated to health projects. See, reports like this just further increase the already existing trust deficit. Until our government starts to show accountability by actually concluding investigations that they began. Until public office holders are being tried and, where found guilty, thrown in prison. Until existing ministries, departments, and agencies are run with transparency. Until public office holders realize that actions have consequences. And we're not just talking media consequences for sure, but actual consequences. Until we see our government tightening their belt and cutting unnecessary expenses, Nigerians will continue to second-guess policies and ministries springing up just like that because of the trust deficiency between Nigerians and their government. The Onsoi report advised that there be a collapsing of MDAs to cut cost of governance. In February 2024, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu set up a committee to implement the report in 12 weeks. We are in the middle of July now. What's the update with the Onsoi report? Can we afford to create new ministries when we should actually be cutting costs? What really is the Ministry of Livestock Development? Good morning, Nigeria.
And away from that, which way Nigeria, let's go to another story now. Based on the recommendation of the National Livestock Reforms Committee on September 14, 2023, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu yesterday established a new Ministry of Livestock Development as part of efforts to address the lingering farmers' herders crisis. Nigeria has seen many decades of farmer herders conflict, taking at least 60,000 lives according to Next Year Security, Peace and Sustainable Development. Joining us now is Coordinator, Coalition of Northern Groups, CNG, Jamilu Charanchi. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Charanchi.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right. Okay. So what's the reaction like, especially from your quarters? We did hear that there are mixed feelings from different quarters, but what is it like from your own end?
Well, actually, it was just last few weeks ago that we had a bill in the National Assembly seeking that the Mr. President should restrict the movement of herders from one place to another. There were so many debates during their build that some people, in fact, most of the Nigerians, especially those from northern part of the country, advised that there should be a ministry that would at least cater the activities of these herders, so that at least their activities will be regulated, their functions will be regulated, and even the ranching we are talking about, we will have somebody whom we believe that he is to take care of that ranching. So I think this is a very nice development, and we believe that it is for the interest of Nigerians and for the interest of the peace to run in the region, particularly the decade of farmers' hardest plague that we have been experiencing in this country. So our only praise is that we believe that the ministry is for the goodness of our people. But our only belief is that we pray that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will ensure that those people that are going to handle the activities of that ministry are people who are rooted from both sides, that is the herders and the farmers, so that at least they know what has been going on for decades, and I will believe that they can provide a solution to such kind of problems that at least will promote peace in their regions or in their areas.
All right, what don't you say? I mean, some people would argue that there is a ministry, an existing ministry that maybe should handle this. For example, the Ministry of Agriculture. Shouldn't livestock come under the Ministry of Agriculture? That's one. And I think the second part would be that why they are asking about this is because we are currently a struggling economy. And when we're not talking about what the financial implications of setting up a new ministry at this time will be.
You see, Nigeria is not short of either money or we are having difficulties in the economy. It's only our problem is that we have leaders that don't have the country at their heart. Leaders who believe in looting the treasury. Leaders who believe in enriching themselves. Leaders who prepare their own problem rather than the problem of the masses. I believe that going by they recently built the house for the vice president of this country is enough to cater for that ministry. We believe that we have seen a report whereby over 3 billion or over 10 billion naira was spent in a week or in 10 days just to repair tires and motors in the State House. We have seen how they budgeted the library of the National Assembly. We have seen how they budgeted the National Library. We have seen how they budgeted the National Hospital, and we have seen how they budgeted the allocated money to the Presidential Villa Clinic. So our problem is not creating new ministry or whatever it is, but our problem is lack of leaders in this country. You see, all the crises we are facing in this country, be it economic crisis, educational crisis, health crisis, whatever crisis we are facing is a crisis of leadership in this country. We don't have leaders. If we have leaders, we have enough money in this country that we can run whatever we want to run in this country. We have enough money that we will enjoy ourselves. We have enough money that can take care of the economy. We have enough money that at least can cater the over 200 people we are talking about in this country. But will our leaders allow themselves not to steal or not to loot our treasury? That's other questions. We have seen the revelations from the EFCC, from ICPC. We have seen so many revelations. We have seen how the treasury is being squandered anyhow, anyways they like. We have seen a situation whereby these governors spend over almost getting to 1 trillion in 3 months only for their local and international trips, for their utilities and other things. We have seen all these things.
So I get your point. Now there's a first part to that question, which is, why did this not come under the responsibilities of the Ministry of Agriculture? Shouldn't livestock be under agriculture?
I think the issue is the same thing with the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs. Why shouldn't the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs come under Ministry of Petroleum Resources? So you see, we always used to prioritize things. When we realize that there is problem wherever there is that problem, we used to solve that problem amicably so that at least for the betterment of this country. I think it is not a bad idea when we have the Ministry of Livestock. It's the same thing as having the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs and equally having the Ministry of Petroleum. It's the same thing of having the Ministry of Agriculture and equally have another program by Anko Barros. It's the same thing. We have the creation of one program under, I think it's General Babangida regime that will cater for the issue of Niger mineral resources states. So I think that it's not a bad idea having the Ministry of Agriculture and having the Ministry of Livestock. And let me tell you something, people who are very familiar with the way how things are moving today with the recent technology we are having or with the recent improvement we are having. Agriculture can be differently, agriculture can be different from livestock production. Livestock production entirely is something that it is on its own. When we are talking about livestock production, we are talking about so many things. And when you are talking about We are talking also about so many things. You see, even if you go to university, you will realize that agri is one of the subjects or one of the areas that has so many components. If you are talking about agricultural crop production, you are talking about crop protection, you are talking about soil science, you are talking about GMO, you are talking about so many things. When you go to livestock, you will also be talking about so many things. So I think it is not a bad idea, in as much as we have people that will have Nigerians at their heart, in as much as we have people that believe that we are here to do the job, not just to enrich themselves. I think it is not a bad idea of having that ministry. They can go concurrently with the Ministry of Agriculture, taking care or specializing particularly on crops, seeds and other things, while the livestock will be focusing on the livestock production, be it either the ruminant, non-ruminant animals, small animals, large animals, and all other things. And specifically the essence of this ministry, if to my own understanding, is how they going to sit down, design a program for this livestock production, design improved programs. This ranching we are talking about, the harder farmers classes, what are the way forward? Even the movement of the cattle should be restricted by having these ranches. But if you allow the Ministry of Agriculture, there are so many burdens on that ministry that ministry cannot even give a special interest on livestock production alone. Because if you give special emphasis on live production alone, also the crop part also need a special emphasis. The soil part also need a special emphasis. In fact, even the agricultural economic extension programs, they need also a special attention. So I think it is not a bad idea having the ministry. The only thing is that let's pray that those that will handle the mantle of leadership of that ministry will have Nigerians and Nigeria at their heart.
All right, Mr. Charanchi, unfortunately, we're out of time. I really wish we could extend on this conversation. But before you go, very short, very precise. You're talking about those who would lead. But you do have the former INEC boss, who is now a co-chairman of this newly created ministry. Do you have faith in Tahiru Jega?
Well, actually, I can say it 100% that I have faith in him. I believe that Jega can move the ministry forward. But it's not Jega that is the problem. The problem is that who are going to work under Jega. And in such kind of cases, I believe those people from the grassroots also should be involved. If I can recall vividly, there is one quote from Mahatma Gandhi who said, anything you do for me without me is against me. So those people with the primary problems, they should be also part of the ministry. But I have full confidence in Jega, and I believe Nigerians believe in Jega, and we believe that Jega is a technocrat and is somebody, a patriotic citizen who has the country at heart and who can do anything humanly possible to ensure that he promotes the country forward.
All right, National Coordinator, Coalition of Northern Groups. Thank you so much, Jamilu Charanchi, for joining us. We look forward to have this conversation more. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, so that does it for the show for today. It's been a fantastic Wednesday edition. Olive, fantastic news as well for the release of the kids.
Yes, fantastic news, but also to mention that we're not quite done when we're talking about our challenges with insecurity. We still have 2 journalists and their families who are still being held by abductors. There's been no word from their families yet, so we are appealing to the federal government, to agencies, to security agencies, to please secure their release. The release of 2 journalists. We have Abdul Ghaffar Alabelewe and Abdul Rahim Audu, who were kidnapped with their families. That is a sad note to end, but a very important conversation to have. And we hope that just as we've announced the reuniting of the Gimba family, we can come again to announce the reuniting of these families as well. Until we come your way again, I am Olive Emodi.
I'm Joe Hansen. See you again tomorrow morning.